Is this radioactive notebook a monument to her greatest triumph? A symbol of a mind that unlocked the secrets of the atom? Or is it the chilling, irrefutable evidence of Marie Curie's most catastrophic, soul-crushing failure? There is a place in Paris, far from the glittering lights of the Eiffel Tower and the bustling crowds of the Champs-Élysées. It is a place of profound silence, the Bibliothèque Nationale de France. Within its hallowed walls, in a climate-controlled vault, sits a small, unassuming object. A collection of simple notebooks, bound in dark cloth. To see them, you must first navigate a bureaucratic maze, stating your purpose with academic gravity. You must then sign a waiver, a legal document that absolves the library of all responsibility for what might happen to your health in the years to come. Finally, if you are granted permission to proceed, you will be handed a protective suit, sealing you off from the very air in the room. Only then can you approach the lead-lined box. Inside, resting on velvet, are the personal notebooks of Marie Curie, and over 100 years after her death, they are still humming with an invisible fire. They are dangerously, permanently, radioactive. The pages that her fingers once touched, the ink that flowed from her pen, are imbued with the ghost of her discovery, radium, an element that glows with an ethereal blue light and silently kills. This object, locked away from the world, is her legacy. But it forces us to confront a question that is both terrifying and essential. A question we will spend the next 20 minutes attempting to unravel. Is this radioactive notebook a monument to her greatest triumph? A symbol of a mind that unlocked the secrets of the atom? Or is it the chilling, irrefutable evidence of Marie Curie's most catastrophic, soul-crushing failure? We all know the legend, Marie Curie. The name itself is a cornerstone of human achievement, a synonym for genius against all odds. We recite her accomplishments like a mantra of inspiration. The first woman to win a Nobel Prize. The first and only person, man or woman, to ever win the Nobel Prize in two different scientific fields. Physics in 1903. Chemistry in 1911. She was a ghost at the feast of science. A woman in a world of men who not only demanded a seat at the table but ended up building a new wing on the house. She shattered every conceivable glass ceiling of her era, becoming a titan in a world that, at best, patronized her and, at worst, actively tried to erase her. Her work with radioactivity didn't just contribute to science. It fundamentally redefined our understanding of matter, of energy, of the very fabric of the universe. She gave us X-rays in the battlefield, saving countless soldiers. She laid the groundwork for the therapies that would one day fight cancer. By every traditional metric of success, she is an immortal. The story we tell ourselves about her is simple, clean, and motivational. It's a story of relentless hard work, unwavering discipline, and a brilliant intellect. And of course, that's true. But it's also a lazy story. It's an incomplete story. It's the version we've sanitized for our own comfort, because the truth is far more complex and far more dangerous. We celebrate her discoveries, but we conveniently ignore the obsessive, all-consuming nature of the mind that made them. What if the source of her world-changing power wasn't just her IQ, but something that bordered on a reckless compulsion? What if her success wasn't born from a desire to win accolades, but from a radical, almost holy devotion to the unknown? This brings us to our big question. We praise Marie Curie for her discoveries, but what if we have fundamentally misunderstood the engine that drove her? What if her greatest strength was a profound and dangerous relationship with fear? And what can that terrifying relationship teach us about the true, often brutal price of our own ambitions? Forget the linear chronological tale you learned in history class. We are not starting with her birth in Poland, nor her struggles as a young governess. We are tearing a page from the middle of the book and jumping straight into the abyss. The year is 1911. Paris is a city of gaslight and shadows. It has been 5 years since her husband and soulmate, Pierre, was crushed to death under the wheels of a horse-drawn carriage on a rain-slicked street. The grief from this event is not a fading memory. It is a constant, cold companion, a phantom limb she feels with every waking moment. She has poured this immense sea of pain into the only vessel that could hold it: her work. The laboratory became her monastery, her sanctuary, a desperate, frantic act of self-development as she sought to keep their shared scientific legacy alive. And she has succeeded beyond anyone's imagination. News breaks that she has been awarded a second Nobel Prize, this time in chemistry, for the isolation of pure radium. It is an achievement so monumental, it is almost impossible to comprehend. It should be the single greatest moment of her professional life, the ultimate validation. Instead, it is the beginning of her public crucifixion. Just as the announcement is made, a rival scientist, bitter with professional jealousy, leaks a cache of personal letters to the sensationalist press. They are letters between Marie and her colleague, the brilliant but married physicist Paul Langevin. The affair becomes a national firestorm. The press, which had once lauded her as a scientific Joan of Arc, now turns on her with a rabid, hyena-like ferocity. The headlines are brutal. They are not just critical, they are xenophobic and misogynistic. They call her a foreign Jewish homewrecker, a Polish sorceress who bewitched a good French husband. Her laboratory is no longer a temple of science, but the love nest of an adulteress. The narrative is swift and vicious. Mobs, whipped into a frenzy by the papers, surround her home in Sceaux. They throw stones at the windows, screaming for the foreign woman to go back to where she came from. Her two young daughters, Irene and Eve, are trapped inside, terrified. This is her ultimate crisis. Her professional zenith coincides with her personal nadir, and in this crucible of public hatred and private shame, she makes a decision that seems, on the surface, like an act of profound misjudgment. Her friends, her colleagues, even the formidable Svante Arrhenius from the Swedish Academy of Sciences, urge her to stay away. They advise her not to come to Stockholm to accept the prize. Wait until the scandal dies down, they plead. They essentially ask her to validate her own shame by hiding from it. And she refuses. With the world screaming for her head, she packs her bags, books her ticket, and prepares to face the King of Sweden. In this moment, we must understand that the true enemy wasn't the angry mob. It wasn't the salacious press. It wasn't even the societal hypocrisy that condemned her while absolving Langevin. Her true enemy was an insidious, invisible force that she herself had unwittingly helped to create. It was an enemy I call the pedestal of expectation. Society, especially in the early 20th century, could not comprehend a woman like Marie Curie in her full humanity, so they turned her into a symbol. She was the Vestal Virgin of science, a sterile, untouchable icon of pure intellect. She wasn't allowed to be a woman of passion, of grief, of desire, of messy, complicated love. She was a statue in the public square. The pedestal didn't allow for flesh and blood. It demanded cold, hard marble. And when the letters revealed her to be a living, breathing, flawed human being, the fall was not just a fall. It was a shattering. The pedestal of expectation, once a symbol of her elevation, revealed its true nature. It was the guillotine of judgment. The very public that had worshipped her now took a gruesome delight in her destruction. It wasn't her science they were attacking. It was her audacity to be human while being a genius. The cost was unbearable. To have redefined the laws of the universe, only to be judged on the laws of a Parisian bedroom, that is a unique and torturous kind of hell. So, what is the lesson we are supposed to learn from this brutal episode? The conventional, modern-day advice would be swift and predictable. Protect your reputation at all costs. Manage your personal brand. Don't give your enemies ammunition. Issue a carefully worded apology. It would be a lesson in public relations. But that is not the lesson Marie Curie took from the fire. Her takeaway was something far more profound, far more radical. A lesson that stands in stark defiance of our modern obsession with perception and image. The lesson is this: when the world descends into chaos, the purity of your work is the only sanctuary you have. Your purpose is your only true north. When the world is screaming at you, When your name is being dragged through the vilest mud, the one thing that cannot be stolen, twisted, or maligned is the truth of your work. Her response to the scandal wasn't a press release. It wasn't a tearful interview. Her response was to walk onto that grand stage in Stockholm, her back straight, her head held high, and deliver her Nobel lecture. And what did she speak about? She didn't mention the scandal. She didn't allude to her pain. She spoke about the properties of polonium and radium. She spoke about the methodology of their isolation. She spoke, with crystalline precision, about the work. It was the ultimate act of defiance. An act that said, "You can judge my life. You can slander my name. You can surround my house. But you cannot touch this. This truth is mine." She had discovered a fundamental law of personal survival. The world's noise, both the thunderous applause and the deafening condemnation, is a distraction from the quiet, persistent signal of your life's purpose. To achieve anything of lasting value, you must cultivate a kind of selective deafness. You must have the iron discipline to tune out the cacophony and listen only to the question that set your soul on fire in the first place. This is the deepest meaning of how to focus on yourself. It's not selfish, it's essential. It's an idea straight from Stoic philosophy. Control what you can. Control your effort, your integrity, your work, and let the rest be noise. Now, let's rewind. Where was this incredible fortitude, this unique and unbreakable philosophy, forged? It wasn't in the halls of the Sorbonne or on the stage in Stockholm. It was forged years earlier, in a place of profound deprivation, a place that would have broken most people. It was forged in a freezing, miserable attic garret in Paris in the 1890 seconds. When the young Maria Skłodowska first arrived in Paris to study, she was desperately poor. She survived on a diet that consisted almost entirely of buttered bread and tea. She would study so late into the night that she would forget to eat. She wore all of her clothes at once to keep from freezing in the winter, and sometimes fainted from sheer malnourishment. By any objective measure, it was a life of miserable poverty. Yet, in her own autobiography, she described this period as one of the most serene and satisfying of her entire life. Why? How is that possible? Because in that cold, lonely room, she possessed something that billionaires and kings spend their entire lives chasing: absolute, diamond-hard clarity of purpose. Every single waking moment was dedicated to one singular goal: learning. Her poverty wasn't a curse, it was a powerful, unintentional filter. It ruthlessly eliminated every possible distraction. There was no money for parties, for new clothes, for fancy dinners, for social climbing. There was only the library, the laboratory, and the boundless universe of her own mind. This intense period of study motivation wasn't just a phase she went through. It became the core of her operational system for the rest of her life. This is where she cultivated what I call an intellectual abundance mindset. In a world obsessed with material wealth, she operated on a different currency. She didn't see the world in terms of what she lacked: money, comfort, status. She saw the world as a treasure chest of infinite, undiscovered secrets. And she was passionately convinced that with enough focus and effort, she could pick the lock. Her motivational drive was completely internal, a fire that needed no external fuel. She wasn't trying to get rich or famous. She was on a spiritual journey of discovery, a quest for understanding that was its own reward. But we must resist the urge to deify her. To truly learn from her, we must see her in her full, flawed humanity. And now, it is time for our Flaw spotlight. Marie Curie's greatest strength, her intense, almost superhuman ability to focus, was inextricably linked to her most significant and tragic flaw: a profound, almost willful blindness to physical danger. For years, she and Pierre worked with tons of radioactive pitchblende in a drafty, dilapidated shed with absolutely no protective gear. They handled materials that were pulsing with energy with their bare hands. She would carry vials of radium salts in her coat pocket, simply because she was enchanted by the beautiful, ethereal blue-green light they emitted in the dark. In her letters, she described this glow with childlike wonder, calling them her fairy lights. She was constantly sick. She suffered from chronic fatigue, from severe burns on her hands that wouldn't heal, from what we now know was aplastic anemia, a bone-deep weariness caused by her body's exposure to radiation. Yet, she dismissed it all as simple exhaustion from overwork. Her obsessive love for her work, her all-consuming desire to understand this magical new element, made her blind to the fact that her greatest discovery was also her silent assassin. It wasn't arrogance. It was a form of tragic, focused love. The same fierce mental fortitude that allowed her to ignore the screams of the Paris mob also allowed her to ignore the screams of her own body's cells. She had to stay hard against a world of doubters, but in doing so, she forgot to protect herself from her own creation. It's a humbling, terrifying reminder that our greatest strengths often cast the darkest and most dangerous shadows. So, how do we take this intense, brilliant, and deeply flawed philosophy and apply it to our own lives, preferably without carrying radioactive materials in our pockets? We can distill her extraordinary approach into a practical, three-step mental model. A framework for a purpose-driven life that I call the Curie Compass. First, isolate the signal. We live in an age of infinite noise. Our attention is the most hunted commodity in the world. Notifications, headlines, social media, the opinions of strangers, it's a constant, deafening roar. To follow the Curie path, you must first do the hard work of finding your signal within that noise. What is the problem you can't stop thinking about in the shower? What is the creative project that makes you forget to eat? What is the work that feels less like a job and more like a calling? This isn't about setting conventional SMART goals for your next promotion. This is about the courageous act of identifying your personal radium, that one thing that glows for you in the dark. This requires deep, honest self-development. Second, acknowledge the cost. Marie Curie's most famous quote is, "Nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood." This is her core mantra. But the unspoken part of that credo is the acceptance of risk. The path to understanding has a price. It will cost you something. It might be your time. It might be your comfort. It will almost certainly be your old beliefs and assumptions. It might even cost you the approval of people you care about. Acknowledge that cost up front. Don't fall into the trap of thinking a life of great purpose comes for free. Look the sacrifice squarely in the eye and say, "You are the price I am willing to pay." This isn't pessimism. It's strategic thinking for the soul. It is the highest form of daily discipline. Third, find beauty in the data. You must learn to fall in love with the process, not just the prize. Marie Curie found sublime joy not just in the idea of discovering an element, but in the grueling, repetitive, painstaking process of crystallization, of boiling down tons of ore for a few specks of glowing salt. She loved the work itself. For us, this means learning to romanticize the effort. Find the beauty in the frustrating lines of code, the quiet hours spent practicing an instrument, the difficult conversations that lead to growth. If you only chase the Nobel Prize, the journey will be an unbearable torture. But if you can learn to love the long, lonely nights in the lab, the journey itself becomes the reward. This is the secret to a motivational drive that never runs out. And so, we find ourselves back in that quiet room in Paris, standing before the lead-lined box, staring at the notebook that holds both a universe of knowledge and a whisper of death. Is it a symbol of her greatest triumph or her most catastrophic failure? We can finally answer that question. It is neither. And it is, profoundly, both. It is a physical paradox. The invisible radiation that makes it so dangerous is the physical proof of the cost she paid. It is the scar left by her Flaw spotlight moment, her beautiful, poetic, tragic blindness to the danger she held in her hands. It is the evidence of her failure to protect herself. But the ink on its pages, the meticulous data, the revolutionary observations, the relentless questions, that is the eternal triumph. It's the signal she isolated from a world of noise. It's the truth she pursued, at the expense of everything else. The notebook, then, is the perfect, haunting metaphor for a life of great purpose. It tells us that true, world-changing impact is never clean. It is messy. It leaves a mark on the world, and it leaves a mark on you. It costs you something. It might even poison you a little. But it is real. The pursuit of a meaningful life isn't about staying safe and untouched. It's about being willing to get your hands dirty with the very substance of your obsession. Let it burn, because the light from that fire will illuminate the way for others. Marie Curie's story isn't a blueprint for achieving a perfect, balanced life. That is a comforting but ultimately hollow modern fantasy. Her life is a testament to something far more rare and valuable. The profound, unshakable peace that comes from finding something you are willing to be unbalanced for. It's a powerful antidote to a world that sells us the impossible dream of having it all at once, without any real sacrifice. She never achieved a perfect life, but she achieved a congruent one. Her actions, her beliefs, her work, her personal philosophy, they were all of one piece. She was willing to pay the ultimate price for her curiosity, and because of that, generations have benefited. We should all be deeply grateful. Her life is the ultimate motivational story, a testament to what a single human being can achieve when they choose, unequivocally, understanding over fear. Your life is your own laboratory, your own quiet, personal shed. You don't have to discover a new element to live a life of consequence. You just have to find the question that gives you that glow, that beautiful, dangerous light that only you can see. Find the thing you are willing to pour your life into, the work that makes you feel both terrified and truly incandescently alive. What are you writing in your notebook? Thank you for listening to the 500 Millionaire Blueprint. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and leave a comment below sharing the signal you are pursuing in your own life. Your journey, your story, it matters.